Hi everyone. As you probably saw my email, I have a family emergency that I cannot come to campus on Tuesday. So I thought actually to record this video for you because I do not want us to be behind. My father has a surgery and it's a kind of like an emergency eye surgery that he has, and I have to go to his pre-op on Tuesday. So that's why I'm actually recording this for you to watch. As I said, I just do not want us to be behind the schedule. So I really appreciate your flexibility, and hopefully I will see you all on Thursday. So if you remember on Thursday last week, this was the last thing that we discussed, the specialization and trade that we briefly discussed in chapter 2. Another topic that I want to briefly discuss with you is two important concepts that are related to trade. The first one is called comparative advantage, and the second one is called absolute advantage. They're slightly different. So I'm going to start with the absolute advantage. So absolute advantage is basically a situation where a country or a producer is able to produce more of several goods compared to another country or another producer. And basically, when it comes to absolute advantage, we're talking about who can produce more in terms of quantity of goods and services. Comparative advantage, however, is all about who is able to produce one specific product at a lower opportunity cost. It means that which country or which producer is able to produce, let's say, good X cheaper, basically, at home. And whoever basically has comparative advantage in producing that product is the one who's going to export or sell that product. And I apologize for the background noise that you might hear. I'm not sure if you're hearing it or not, but my dog is chewing on his bone, and I'm kind of locking myself in the office from my kids. So he's with me, and if he goes outside, it will be headache playing. He will play with my kids. It will be very, very chaotic. Anyhow, this is just an example that I have here for comparative advantage and absolute advantage. So if you, so we have two countries, US and China. They both produce DVDs and shoes. In terms of absolute advantage and which country is able to produce more of both goods, as you can see, US has absolute advantage in making both products. But when it comes to comparative advantage, US, let's look at shoes. US is able to produce 500 shoes, but China is able to produce only 300 shoes. So if you look at the opportunity cost of producing shoes, you will see that for US to produce 500 units of shoes, US is supposed to give up 250 DVDs. But it is cheaper for China actually to produce shoes, because in order to produce 300 pairs of shoes, China is giving up only 30 DVDs. So basically, the opportunity cost for US is much higher to produce shoes, because the opportunity cost of one shoe, as we also discussed it for robots and for if you remember, it was robot and what was the other one? Pizza. You probably remember that we always and always calculate the opportunity cost for one unit of product. So the opportunity cost of 500 units of shoes or pairs of shoes is 250 DVDs for US, but the opportunity cost of one pair is half a DVD. The opportunity cost of 300 units of shoes for China is the 30 DVDs that China is giving up. But the opportunity cost of one pair for China is 1 divided by 10. It's 1/10 of a DVD. So basically, China is giving up less number of DVDs. It is cheaper for China to produce shoes compared to US. So remember, US had absolute advantage in both goods because US is able to produce both of these products, more of both of these products compared to China. But the US has only comparative advantage in DVDs. If you calculate the opportunity cost of DVDs for these two countries, you will see that the opportunity cost of DVDs for US is lower than China, suggesting that US should produce more DVDs and sell more DVDs, export DVDs. And China, as I just explained, the opportunity cost of shoes, China is capable of producing shoes at the lower cost. So China has comparative advantage in shoes. So China should be focused on producing shoes only and sell shoes to US because it's just cheaper for China to make shoes at home. So remember, if one country, like this example here, has absolute advantage in making several goods, it does not necessarily mean that that country also has comparative advantage in making all those goods. Just like this example here, US has absolute advantage in both goods, but has comparative advantage in only one product. So this was the last thing that I wanted actually to discuss in chapter 2, before we move on to chapter 3. Remember that in chapter 2, we also talked about on Thursday about different economic systems. We talked about laissez-faire capitalism, command system, as well as market economy. And then the major part of our chapter 2 was the circular flow. So we are done with chapter 2. Remember that homework number 1 is open. It's from chapter 1 and 2 on Connect. Let me know if you have any question. But now you are completely ready to answer all the questions in homework number 1. Now let's start chapter number 3, which is about demand, supply, and market equilibrium. We talked briefly about market when we talked about circular flow. And if you remember, we had 2 different markets in circular flow. We had product market and we had factor market. And if you remember, we basically talked about how these 2 markets can connect our households and businesses. So market is any type of arrangement that brings the buyers and sellers together, allows them basically to connect with each other, exchange information, look at the prices, check out the quality. Nowadays, we have a traditional market like Kroger, Walmart, when you go in person. But all these markets, pretty much all of these traditional markets nowadays, they also have an online market. So we can have a traditional market when we say market, or it can be an online market like Amazon or the HEB curbside when you order something online and then you pick it up in few hours. We are focused in this chapter on one specific market. It is called competitive market. In microeconomics, we will come back to this competitive market or pure competition market, and we will learn about the profit maximization in this market. In macroeconomics, this is the only time that we basically discuss competitive market. So what's special about this market? Competitive market is huge. There are tons of buyers and sellers in this market. Getting into this market is super duper easy for the producers. If they make money, they stay in the market. Otherwise, they just leave the market. The products that you see in this market are very, very similar. The agricultural products are actually in this market, stock market in this market. So the products are very similar, especially in the agricultural market. And typically the consumers go with the cheapest product in the market. They are not really loyal to specific brands. So let's say they want to buy a gallon of milk. They typically go for the cheapest milk in the market because milk is just milk. You might say, I only purchase organic milk. But remember, this is a huge market and you are going to be a small fraction of this market. The majority of consumers, they go with the cheapest product in the market because the products are very, very similar. We are going to talk about both sides of this market. And remember that each market basically has 2 sides. Doesn't matter if we're talking about competitive market or other types of market, labor market. We have monopoly market. We have this market. This chapter is all about competitive market. We have oligopoly market. Any market that you can think about has, or even those markets that we had in chapter 2. We have buyers on one side, and then we have producers or sellers on the other side. Today, we're going to be focused on the buyer side of the market or demand side of the market. And then later on Thursday, hopefully, we will talk about the supply side. And you will see that the structure of the supply side is very, very similar to what we do for the demand. Okay, so here's a very simple example that I put here for us. So remember, we're going to forget about the supply side of the market today, and we're just going to be focused on demand. And I'm going actually to use this example to somehow draw our demand curve and also define our demand. Okay, and you will see that it's super duper easy. There are so many factors that can impact our purchasing plans as consumers. But the main important factor that can impact our purchasing plans and how we decide to buy different goods and services is price. You can tell me, I also care about the quality of product. You're absolutely right. One of you might say that I care about my money. You are absolutely right as well. As I said, there are so many things that you consider when you want to buy even a bag of M&M or a pound of apple. Your income, if you like M&M or not, so your taste, your preferences. You might compare the price of M&M with another similar product in the market, let's say Hershey's bar or Kit Kat or whatever basically you prefer. You check your budget. We talked about budget. You care about probably future prices, not maybe in the example of M&M, but if you want to buy a bigger product, like a more expensive product, you might do that. So there are different factors that can impact your plans, but the price is probably the main important factor that you consider when you want to buy any product. Okay, so to understand demand, as we also did in previous chapters, we are going to make this huge assumption here that anything that can impact your purchasing plan is fixed except price. So you have the money, you like M&M, you don't care about future prices, you love M&M, that's why you're not going to look into prices of similar products in the market. So all these other factors are fixed, and the only thing that you consider here is the price of your M&M. That's the only thing that is going to impact your product, because demand, as you will see, is or I should say demand shows the relationship between price and how many bags of M&M that you purchased. If we can figure out the relationship between price and how many bags of M&M you purchase at each price, we are done. We are able to define our demand, and then we can look into some numbers and draw our very first demand curve. So one way to define demand is to find a relationship between price and how many goods and services we purchase. In this example, how many bags of M&M you buy, when other factors that might impact your purchasing plans are fixed. Also, remember that demand shows your purchasing plans as a consumer. It shows how much you are willing to pay for M&M, for a bag of M&M. So we have different ways that we can define demand, okay? So if you are taking notes, you can definitely pause and write down these definitions that I just gave you, okay? Let me show you a little table that I put here for us. And in this column here, I'm changing the price of M&M. So the price is dropping from 2.4 all the way to 75 cents. And I put this little column here, and I'm calling it quantity demanded, because we like to distinguish between the amount of goods and services that we buy as a consumer with the amount of goods and services that sellers sell. So whenever it comes to us, buyers, consumers, we call that number of goods and services quantity demanded. I'm going to call it in the future QD. And then for suppliers, when on Thursday we talk about supply, we're going to call the number of goods and services that producers or sellers basically produce and sell quantity supply. So quantity demanded in this example is nothing but the number of bags of M&M, okay? So this was the time that I actually, if we were in the classroom, I would have asked you, okay, what do you think? What should I put here for quantity demanded? How many bags of M&M you're going to buy when the price is 2.4? Or what is the, how many bags of M&M you buy when the price is 2? So I am going to fill this out because you are not here with me. So let's say then the price is 2.4. I would just buy probably 2 bags of M&M. And because I have 2 kids, they're going to fight. And then if the price drops to 2, I might buy 4. If the price goes down to 1.5, I might buy 6. And if it's after Halloween and everything is on sale, I might buy 8 and just to stock up on those M&Ms, okay? So remember the goal here for us was to find the relationship between price and how many bags of M&M we're going to buy when other factors that can impact your purchasing plans are fixed. And as you can see, for the price is dropping, right? The price is decreasing. But look what is happening to the number of bags of M&M that I'm going to buy. So the quantity demanded or the number of bags of M&M that I'm going to buy is increasing. So we were looking for the relationship between price and quantity. We found that relationship. We already knew that relationship. Price is going down, I am buying more. You can move the opposite. Price is going up from 75 cents all the way to 2.4. And the quantity demanded, the number of bags of M&M that I'm buying is going down. And we already knew that because we are consumers, we are buyers. When something is cheaper, we buy more. When something is more expensive, we buy less. So we were looking for a relationship. We wanted to see how price and quantity are related. And we found that relationship. There is an inverse relationship between price and quantity. There is a negative relationship between price and quantity. That's all about demand. Demand shows the inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. If something is cheaper, you buy more. When something is less expensive, you buy more. When it's more expensive, you buy less. So that's a very, very important definition we have. Demand shows the relationship between price and quantity of goods and services that we purchase, or as we call it, quantity demanded. We call this inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded law of demand. That also explains the shape of our demand curve. So whenever we want to draw our demand curve, we are actually going, again, remember, we made a big assumption here. Income, preferences, your expectations about future prices, they were all fixed. We are just focused on price and how the change in price will change the number of bags of M&M that we buy, the quantity demanded. We found that relationship, right? We are going to change the other factors later on. But for now, we're just focused on price. So whenever we want to draw also our demand, again, we're focused on price because as I said, price is the most important factor that can impact your decision as a buyer in purchasing different goods and services. Whenever we want to draw our demand curve, and actually we are going to use a table like this, whenever we want to draw our demand, we are going to use prices, different prices, and different quantity demanded. You always put your price, look at this graph, you always put your price right here on this axis here, your y-axis, and then your quantity will go all the way here. So far, whenever we drew budget line or PPC, I told you it doesn't really matter where you're putting your pizza, where you're putting your robot, or the example we had last week. Um, um, we did in class, if you remember at the beginning of the class for coffee and bagel. I told you it doesn't really matter if you put your coffee on the X or on the Y. But from now on, when we are drawing demand and supply, it doesn't matter which market we're going to talk about. The price always goes here on the Y-axis, and your quantity will always go on the X. So we had different prices. Of course, this is another example that I put here. So this one is the market for bottled water. We're going to use this example when we talk about market equilibrium. That's why I also put it here. Another example for showing that inverse relationship between price and quantity and law of demand. Price is again going down, quantity demanded is going up. So bottled water is cheaper, you're going to buy more. So you are going to put the prices here, your quantity here, and then you are going to find basically these 4 points on the graph, just like we did for PPC, just like we did for budget line. So you basically need at least 2 points to draw your demand. But here we have more points. So the line that passes through all these points is going to be our demand curve. Demand can be linear, straight line like here, or it can be a curve, non-linear. For simplicity in our class, we typically draw demand the straight line. We basically look into linear demand. And the law of demand, which was the inverse relationship between price and our quantity, can explain why we have a downward slope demand. We have a, because the price is dropping and you are buying more, right? We have that inverse relationship between price and the number of bottles of water that we buy or our quantity demanded. That's why we have a downward shape for our demand. Later on Thursday, you will see that supply has the opposite shape of our demand. Supply is upward slope. But here, our demand is downward slope. So don't forget about the shape of our demand, okay? So our demand is downward slope, and we can explain the shape of our demand curve by using the law of demand or the inverse relationship between demand and, the inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. Remember, whenever we say demand in our class, whenever we say supply, we are talking about market demand and market supply, okay? And market demand and market supply are coming from the demand of all the buyers in the market or the supply of all the suppliers in the market. So if you add the demand for every single buyer in the market, you are going to get your market demand, okay? So the easiest way to figure out market demand is to, the price is given, right? Price is the same for everyone. When you go to HEB, the price of milk is the same for you, a person shopping next to you, or even if somebody goes to another, let's say you go to HEB. If you go to HEB in Cyprus, the price is going to be the same as HEB in Houston, right? So the price is the same for everybody. Of course, if you want to order curbside actually for HEB is the same, but for Costco, for instance, online shopping is more expensive. But anyhow, in the market, the price should be the same for all the buyers, okay? So the easiest way for us to get the market demand is to add the quantity demanded of all the buyers in the market. Then you have one market quantity demanded, and the price, as I said, is the same for everybody. So then you can basically get your market demand. Look at this example. We have 3 buyers in this market. This is a market for corn. Price, as I said, is given for everyone. We have 3 buyers. The easiest way to get our market demand is to add the quantity demanded of all these 3 buyers at each price. So the very last column in this table is our total quantity demanded or market quantity demanded for all the prices here. So our very last graph here On the right at bottom is our market demand, which is again downward slope because the law of demand applies to both individuals' demand as well as the market demand. So for when the price is 5, you are adding the quantity demanded of Joe, Jen, and Jay. The quantity demanded is 30. That's your market quantity demanded. You're going to do the same thing when the price is 4. 20 plus 23 plus 17, 60. That is your market quantity demanded. You are going to put the prices here, market quantity demanded. And here, just focus on the very last graph. I will explain these later. You're going to put everything, all the quantities, market quantities or total quantity demanded on the X. And then you are going to find all these points, all these prices, and all these quantities. And then you should end up with something like this for your market demand, which is again downward slope. Law of demand applies again here. That's the easiest way you can find your market demand. So to get the market demand, you should add the quantity demanded of all the buyers. Another way for us to get the market demand is to add the demand curve of all the buyers. So we have a demand curve for Joe, for Jen, and Jay. So instead of using a table, you can again get your market demand. Now you are going to add all the quantities from here, from the graph for each price, which will give you the same exact thing that we did here using the table. I myself prefer the table, and of course for the test or for homework, as we always think about, I will just ask you to tell me how you can get your market demand, or I might just give you quantity demanded, and then I will ask you to get the market demand. Okay, market quantity demanded, just like I did here, because I do not have all the numbers as you can see here for these three demand curves. So it might be a little bit hard to work with graphs. That's why I definitely prefer table. So remember, you add the quantity demanded of all the buyers in the market, and in our class, the buyers will be 2 to 3 for each price, and then you will get your total quantity demanded. Then you can draw your downward slope market demand. It's also the same thing for our supply. So we will do the same thing when we talk about market supply. Now that we know what we mean by demand, demand shows the relationship between price and quantity demanded when all the other factors are fixed. It also shows the purchasing plans of our buyers or the willingness to pay of our consumers. Now, let's go back to those other factors that we kept fixed so far. So we were focused on the relationship between price and the number of goods and services that we purchase. Now, let's look at other factors that can impact your purchasing plans. We're so far fixed by a big assumption that we made. You liked M&M, so you prefer to buy M&M. You had the money, income. You didn't care about the price of similar products in the markets, right? Or the expectations. Now we're going to look into all these other factors because these are also important, as well as the price, of course, that can impact your decision when it comes to demand, right? Your decision in terms of purchasing goods and services. So these are the 5 determinants of demand that we have here, okay? Remember, when the price of a product changes, just like we did for our example for M&M, you are moving from one point to another point on the very same demand curve. So let's go back to this. So if the price increases from 1.5 to $2, you are going to move from point B to point A because your quantity demanded is going down from 1 to 0. If the price, let's say, decreases from 1 to 50 cents, are moving from C to D. So you are on the same demand curve. You are just moving along the demand, either downward or upward, depending on what's happening to your price. Why? Because when you change the price, it is just the quantity demanded that is changing. The number of bottles of water, the number of bags of M&M that you purchase. When we talk about anything other than price, like these determinants of demand, there will be a complete shift in our demand curve. If our demand increases, there will be a rightward shift in demand. Our demand curve will shift to the right-hand side of our original demand. So we have a completely new demand curve. And if for any reason demand decreases, our demand curve will shift to the left-hand side of the original demand, okay? So from now on, if the price of your product is changing in the very same market, and we will look into some examples on Thursday, your demand is not going to shift. You are moving from one point to another. If anything other than price changes, like your preferences, number of buyers in the market, your income, price of related goods, expectations, the demand curve will shift. So look at this graph. If the price changes, you are moving from a point like A to a point B if the price drops, or you're going to move from B to A if the price is increasing. But if we're talking about anything other than price, let's say for any reason your demand is increasing, our D1, which is our original demand, will move to the right. So you will end up with completely new demand curve. Let's call it D2. We'll talk about how the demand is going to go up or down. Just be patient. I'm just showing you the graph. And if for any reason, this is our original demand, D1, for any reason, our demand decreases, we are going to move away from this demand. We are going to shift our demand to the left-hand side of D1. So we have a completely new demand. Let's call it D3. So from now on, when demand increases, we have a rightward shift in demand. If demand decreases, we have a leftward shift in demand. Now let's look at the factors that can shift our demand. Again, if the price changes, there is no shift. Taste or preferences is super duper easy. If you like something, you're going to buy more. If you don't like it, you're going to buy less. So if you like Apple, your demand for Apple will increase. There will be a rightward shift in your demand. If you don't like M&M, your demand for M&M will shift to the left because you're just not interested, right? So taste, I think, is very, very easy, as well as the number of buyers. Remember, when it comes to determinants of demand, we're going to look at one factor at a time. We're not going to change both the preferences and your income. We're not going to change the number of buyers and your expectations about future prices. It will make our discussions complicated. Even the economists should do some analogy to understand which factor will have a bigger impact on demand or less impact on demand. But for our class, when we are changing the number of buyers, that is the only factor we're changing. Income, preferences, they're all fixed, okay? Just for simplicity, don't forget that. So number of buyers is just like preferences or taste. It's very easy. If you have more buyers in the market, demand will increase. If you have less number of buyers, demand will shift to the left. What happened during COVID, when just COVID started? There was large number of buyers looking for toilet papers. So the demand for toilet paper increased. We had a rightward shift in demand. Then afterwards, the demand dropped because people realized that probably buying the toilet paper has nothing to do with COVID, right? There's no diarrhea coming with COVID. So the demand shifted to the left. Income. It comes to income, we have two types of goods that we like to distinguish. The majority of goods and services that we know are called normal goods. Normal goods like shoes, cell phone, milk, bread, they are all normal goods. So if your income increases, if you have more money, in general, you buy more of these normal goods, okay? If you lose your job, if your income decreases, you have less money, your demand for normal good will go down. So if your income increases, the demand for normal good will shift rightward. And if the income decreases, demand will shift leftward. So income and demand are moving in the same direction, right? Another type of product we have here is called inferior goods. Inferior goods are those goods that if you have more money, you're going to buy actually less of those products, okay? So your demand for inferior goods will go down as your income increases. Let me give you an example. Used clothing is a good example for inferior good. Another classic example is ramen noodles. I know some of us love ramen noodles, but remember the preferences is fixed here. Taste is fixed here. It's not going to impact your decision. It's just your income. If your income increases, your demand for ramen noodles will go down. You can afford buying steak or eating out, right? So, or mac and cheese. Again, my kids love mac and cheese. So definitely it's not an inferior good in my house, but it is a classic example of inferior goods. Bus rides, another classic example of inferior good. And the idea is, again, we're not talking about probably taking bus is very convenient in New York City. It's the best transportation or whatnot. It's just easy, but we're just talking about the relationship, the impact, not the relationship, the impact of income, right? So if you have more money, you can afford buying a car, right? So your demand for bus rides will go down. If your income increases, your demand for used shoes will go down because you can afford buying a new shoes, right? If your income decreases, however, your demand for inferior goods again will increase. You're going to sell your car if you don't have money and you're going to take the bus, right? So for inferior goods, demand and income are actually moving in the opposite direction, okay? So when it comes to income, don't forget we're talking about normal goods and inferior goods. And I'll be very specific, especially for inferior goods on the homework or test. If the question doesn't say anything about the type of product, we're talking about normal good, okay? But if it's inferior, I will definitely let you know. Another example is the price of related goods. Like I told you, sometimes when you want to buy a bag of M&M, you might also check out the price of Hershey's bar, right? So the other products that are related to M&M can also impact your decision. When it comes to related goods, we have two types of related goods. The first one is called substitute. Substitute goods are those goods that you replace one with another one, right? Let's say sweetener and sugar, ice cream and frozen yogurt, turkey and chicken. So these are substitute goods, coffee and tea. If the price of coffee changes, it will impact the demand for tea. If coffee becomes more expensive, your demand for tea as a substitute will increase. Remember, I'm not saying what will happen to the number of cups of coffee that I'm going to buy, because by law of demand, the quantity demanded for coffee or the number of cups of coffee that I buy will drop. That's law of demand. If something is more expensive, you buy less. But here I'm talking about two markets that are related, coffee and tea. If coffee becomes more expensive, you have an option. You can buy more tea. Again, we're not talking about your preferences. You might tell me, oh, I don't drink tea. But the assumption here is that your preference is fixed. Your income is fixed, okay? So when coffee is more expensive, the demand for tea will increase. If the price for coffee decreases, your demand for tea will also decline. So there will be a leftward shift in demand for tea, okay? Because they are related. We also have complementary goods. Complementary goods are those goods that you always use them, buy them together. You never drink your coffee without sugar or without cream. So when the price of your coffee changes, it will impact the demand for cream because they are related. So if coffee becomes more expensive, automatically your demand for cream will go down. And if coffee becomes cheaper, your demand for cream will increase. Another example for complementary goods are peanut butter and jelly, or hot dog and hot dog buns. So these are complementary goods. You always buy them together, okay? But remember, again, majority of goods that we know are unrelated. So if the price of coffee changes, it has nothing to do with my demand for shoes, right? But if they are related, then the change in price of one of them will shift the demand for the other one. So if coffee becomes more expensive, the demand for cream will shift leftward. If coffee becomes cheaper, my demand for cream will shift to the right because the demand is increasing, okay? And this is the unrelated product that I was talking about. The last determinant of demand is called expectations. It could be your expectations about future prices or future income. So let's just start with future prices. If you're, let's say you want to buy a brand new TV. If you're expecting that the price of that TV will drop during Black Friday sale, then probably, let's say it's just the beginning of November or mid-November, you are actually going to wait. You are not going to buy that TV today, right? Because you know that the price will go down. So your demand today for that TV will decrease, will shift to the left. If, however, you expect that, okay, I'm definitely going to miss the Black Friday sale because I don't want to camp out of Best Buy on the night of Thanksgiving. So, and most probably the price will increase, and I definitely need that TV, then your demand for TV today will increase. So, the future prices are impacting your demand today. So whenever we talk about expectation, we want to see how the buyers or sellers are going to behave right away. Okay. Your future income, your expectation about your future income can also impact the decisions that you're making today, can impact your demand today. If you're expecting that, God forbid, you're going to lose your job in the future, or you want to become a full-time student so you cannot work as much as before, so your income will drop in the future, you start saving more money, right? You're not going to buy that TV. So your demand today for TV will go down. Your demand will shift leftward. If you, however, expect that there will be a raise for you in the future and you need that TV, most of the time we're going to buy that TV today because you know that you can pay off your debt in the future. Again, you can tell me I'm not going to do that. I should see first my paycheck, which is pretty wise. Pretty wise. That's what I would do. But again, in general, we like to generalize things in economic. In general, if people know that they have the money in the future, they're going to go for that TV and they're going to buy it today. So if you're expecting that your income will go up in the future, your demand for that TV will increase. There will be a rightward shift in demand, okay? So if we are talking about income, expectation, preferences, price of related goods, number of goods and services, all these determinants of demand that we discussed, there will be a shift in our demand. I tried to summarize all these things that we discussed here in this slide and in the next. But remember, if the price of the product is changing, there is no shift in demand. There will be a movement along the very same demand, just like here, okay? So when it comes to demand and the questions that we discuss in demand, pay attention. If the price is changing, there is no shift. And this is the big part of this chapter, I'm telling you. And we will look into some examples, of course, on Thursday. But this is the most confusing part of, I think, the discussion in demand. Remember, if price is changing, your quantity demanded is changing. That's why there is no shift. If anything other than price changes, there will be a shift. If your income changes, if your preferences changes, if the price of related goods change, if the number of buyers changes, if the expectations change, these are the factors that will shift your demand. So if you're taking notes, go back to what I just said. Write it down. You need to know the difference between changing demand, changing quantity demanded by now, okay? You need to know the difference between demand and quantity demanded today. Remember, quantity demanded is just one single number. If the price of coffee is 1 cup, I'm going to buy 2 cups. 2 is my quantity demanded. Quantity demanded is just one single number. It's just one point on the demand curve. Demand, however, is the list of different prices and the list of different quantities. Okay, that's a big difference between quantity demanded and demand. So I'm going to stop here. Please, before coming to class on Thursday, review the demand. Okay, the supply is going to be very, very similar to our demand. I want you to remember and study the determinants of demand, the difference between changing demand, changing quantity demanded. Before we start supply, we are going to look into some examples, and then we're going to kind of move fast in supply because how we're defining supply is very, very similar to demand. So I definitely want you guys to study this part, and I'm expecting you to study this part before coming to class on Thursday. Otherwise, you'll be very, very confused, okay? Because the very first thing that I will do on Thursday is just starting looking at examples. And if you don't have any idea about demand, you're not going to understand those examples, okay? Again, I apologize for canceling the class on Tuesday. So as I said, this is my pre-op appointment for my dad. And it is scheduled, actually, his surgery to be done next week. It should not conflict with our class unless they change it. And since my parents do not speak English fluently, they definitely need me to be there with them. So I really, really apologize for that. Please let me know if you have any question. I am available by email, and I would say send your emails to my Lone Star email using your own Lone Star email. I have Lone Star email on my phone, so I check it regularly compared to D12. Let me know if you have any question, and I will see you all on Thursday. Have a good one, guys.